XV1. Up for critical review and reaction is the late, great Jordan Maxwell on The God Show.
Which means the masters who run America, and there's only a handful of them, these few people who run this country, they just want to see which one of these airhead goofballs you guys like. Do you like this fruitcake over here, or this fruitcake over there, or this mentally deranged moron over here? Which one do you like?
Or which ideas are going to gain the support so they can kind of move the agenda in that direction?
That's exactly right. So which one of these fruitcakes do you like? Because they're all mentally deranged. They're all under our control. We've got all kinds of photographs with their women and their boyfriends, and we've got all kinds of stuff on them. So we're going to put these chumps up to run for president. But which one do you people out there in video land, which one of these dopes do you like? And so when the masters see that everybody likes this one guy, then that's the one we will put in charge of the corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody will be happy. They're happy because they got their leader. Now, you didn't get anything. You know, like Dick Gregory used to say, in America, in America, we like to brag about the fact that we can elect, but you cannot select. That's the difference. So you can only elect the 3 or 4 chumps that the masters put in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them are either cross-dressers, mentally deranged, have got criminal records, or totally mentally deranged people. But they just want you to go to the polls and let them know which one of these fruitcakes do you want, will you feel good about.
Well, the way I see it, they need people who have dirt on them so they can hold it over them if they get out of line. Yeah,
of course. That's why in the Skull and Bones, you have to lay in a coffin naked, and you must talk and tell audibly. You must tell all the men who are standing around the coffin. You must tell them of your secret sexual escapades. You must tell them about all the secrets that nobody knows about you. You must do that. And the men are standing around you, listening to you. And that is what you must do. And the reason why is very simple. Then they accept you into their fraternal order, and now you are in a very powerful position to become of governors and senators and congressmen. And they know that you will be trustworthy. So if not, they've got you recorded. They know exactly what you've done, and they can ruin your name in 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So they know you will be a good, what we call, team player. You had better be a team player, because the organization, the mob, is going to be very unhappy with you if you decide you don't want to do something they told you to do. Because your name's going to be out there in the paper tomorrow morning with all of your real escapades that can be brought against anybody out there. So, that's the way it works.
We saw it with Senator Craig a year ago, something like that. He started going out of line of the agenda, and boom, immediately.
Well, that's what happens. They won't do that anymore.
Absolutely. If I can go back to religion for a second, there was something in one of your talks that really inspired me. And that's when you said we have to look beyond the gods of religion and approach the creator of the universe as a great king.
Yeah.
And the prayer that I prayed was, God, please, take me whatever direction you want to take me. I'll walk whatever path, no questions asked. And lo and behold, 2 years later, here I am speaking to you. And it's really amazing. So I'm ever eternally grateful for that. But there is another thing in that same talk that you said that I had a question about. I speak Greek fluently. And in the Greek language, when we speak to somebody of authority or, with respect or, to show respect, we speak in the plural. Now, is it possible that when you said that the Elohim was actually a plural word, is it possible they were just referring to God with that same respectful tone that the Greeks would use?
No, and I know that argument. I've seen the argument made many, many times, and I understand what you're saying. But of course, it is understood. It can be understood that way. But originally, in the original language, if you go back to the Phoenician Canaanite language, which we today call Hebrew, there is no Hebrew language. There is a Phoenician Canaanite language, which the Hebrews speak. And when you go back to the most ancient times, it was understood that it was in the plural. But with the coming of Christianity in the Middle Ages, and especially from the 16th century on, they began to pick up the idea and use the idea that the plural actually was a way to was just an honorable way of addressing someone with special honors. So it would be like a plural honor. And I've heard those arguments, but in actual fact, no. You go back and watch the way the religious words and terms have come down to us over the past 5,000 years or so. The answer is no. Originally, in fact, it meant plural, but it has become accepted that today, especially in modern day, that plural can mean that it was just an extra honor. So
now, these gods, are they the gods that landed in Sumer?
Oh well, that's all the subject. There's so many places we could go with all of this. What was that I was going to say in relation to that thing about Elohim? In the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth. This is why in Genesis 1:28, when it's talking about, when it's talking about the creation of Adam and Eve, and it says, the gods said, "Come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Well, logic alone would dictate, and I asked Rabbi Antelman, I've asked a lot of rabbis, but in particular, Rabbi Marvin Antelman from Newton, Massachusetts, was a dear friend of mine for many years. He ended up on the Knesset in Israel, but we were very close friends and used to correspond and talk on the phone for hours. And I asked Rabbi Marvin Antelman about this plural and the use, and you'd be surprised some of the things that rabbis will tell you if it's off the record. And so when you come to the idea of God, what I was going to get back to, I forgot, was that the very word God in the Greek is associated with the word theo or T-H-E or theo.
Theos, yes.
And so theos or theology is where, is the studyology is the study of, and theology is the study of God, theo or theology. But the same root word gives us of theology, theo, gives us our word theater. So in the ancient Greek world, it was called the God show. It was called a theater. It was an open air theater where there would be plays, morality plays, which would be acted out, and they were called a theater. Well, that's what the church is today. It's a theater. You go in. They don't have a screen. It's an actual act. It's going on. You pay money and you go in and sit in the theater and learn about theos or theology. It's a God show.
Amazing. I speak Greek fluently, and I've never made that connection.
Yeah, well, there it is. And why is it when the Catholic Church or the priest walks out, everyone rises? For the same reason that in a courtroom, when the judge walks out, everyone rises. Why? It's because all churches operate under all churches, Catholic and Protestant and Jewish. All churches operate under maritime admiralty. They operate under international maritime admiralty law, the law of the sea,
mm-hmm.
and the law of water.
That's why you need a passport.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so you go from one port to the next. You can't pass unless they know who you are. So you've got a passport. And the law of admiralty is the law of water, as opposed to the law of the land. So we have two things going here, the law of the land and the law of water. Well, people have heard that term, the law of the land. But the law of the land is simply the custom of the people who live on a particular piece of land. But the law of the land is different in every land. Well, there are things you can do in Russia you can't do in America. There are things you can do in South Africa you can't do in China. So it's the law of the land is the law of the custom of the people who live on that particular piece of land. But the law of water is all over the earth. And so the law of water is banking law. This is why a judge rules from the bench. When the judge walks out, everyone rises, because he is representing maritime admiralty. And this is why in a courtroom you've got a fence and a gate. And the people sit on one side of the fence and gate, and the judge with his entourage sits on the other side of the fence and the gate. And the fence is there to divide the land from the water. And that's why when your name is called, you put your hand on the gate to open it up. What you don't realize is when you put your hand on that gate, that there's a piece of wood across the top of that gate, and it's called a bar. And so you're not licensed to pass the bar. Only an attorney is licensed to go in and out and pass the bar. You're not. And so when you put your hand on the bar and you're not licensed to pass the bar, immediately you are now in hot water. And someone's going to have to bail you out. And because your body is 90% water and it's biological water, if you can't be bailed out, your ship is sinking, and if you can't be bailed out because you're in hot water, then they're going to take your body, which is a battery, and put it in a cell. That's why you're sitting now in a cell, which is a battery. And if you understand how international monetary systems work, as I said, maritime admiralty is the law of water or the law of banking. And when the judge walks out, he sits down on the bench. But we say the judge is ruling from the bench. What is a bench? Look it up in a Latin dictionary. A bench is a bank. What does a bank do? A bank directs the flow of the currency because it's a river bank. And so it directs the flow of the currency because your money is the cash flow, the liquid asset. It's the law of water, maritime admiralty.
How does this relate to UCC?
Oh, the UCC is merely a part of the whole superstructure of maritime admiralty. All of this is talking about the law of water is the law of bank. And the judge rules from the bench, which is a bank in Latin. Look it up in a Latin dictionary. Bench is a bank because in the Middle East, thousands of years ago in Jerusalem and Syria and Lebanon, and even today in Egypt, you walk down the street and there'll be people sitting on the street and they got a bench in front of them and they're selling things. And if you buy something, you have to lean down and they will make the change there on the bench. And they're selling their watches or whatever off the bench, and you put your money on the bench. So the word bench is a bank. And so the judge rules from the bench, which means he is representing the bank. And therefore, since he's ruling for the bank, somebody's going to pay their debt to society. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to pay. So bring your checkbook. And if you can't pay, then you're going to jail, where they will put you in a cell because you're a biological battery. But happily, that's not important because it has nothing to do with football. And so, well, I mean, it's true. It has nothing to do with anything that's of importance like basketball and Britney Spears or any of the silly, nonsensical games that people play. I'm just interested in the real world.
Well, you're talking
where
about
the real people operate. I'm interested in knowing who is owning us in our bodies. Who owns your body? Who controls your country? Where are you going? And I always say to Christians, if you think for 1 minute that when you die, you're going to go before God and you're going to be judged before God, then my suggestion to you is that you had better start thinking about what you're going to say when you're before God and you find out that you never knew the truth about anything ever, and that you were deceived by the great deceiver. because you're telling me that Satan is a very big deceiver. He's the master deceiver who could deceive. The whole world can be deceived by him except you. And the whole world is standing in the power of the wicked one. Satan, the devil, is the great deceiver who deceives all the nations of the people of the world except your church in Alabama. And that's the only one that he didn't get. And I'm thinking to myself, so when you die, and if you're going to go before your God, you're going to look like a 5-year-old that's been caught doing something by the father. And your father's going to be looking at you, and you know he found you out. So now you're trying to kick the pebbles on the ground and put your head in your pocket and kind of act dumb like you didn't know what you were doing and try and come up with some kind of an excuse that he will buy. And so I tell Christians, get ready for that. Because when you wake up on the other side after you die and you're before your God, you're going to find out that you were lied to from day one. You never, ever came close to knowing what was going on. So now you're going to have to explain to God how you got to be so damn stupid.
And Jordan, like I was saying before the break, I don't think that all this truth is going to be presented to people on a silver platter. I think it's going to be esoteric knowledge that you have to dig out for yourself. It's just like if you were working out. You know, you're not going to get a perfect body by sitting around and eating fast food and whatever's thrown in your face. You're going to have to go to the gym. You're going to have to jog. You're going to have to really work to get that perfect body. Now, why wouldn't the same thing be with a perfect mind? You know, you're going to have to seek this knowledge out if you want to find it.
Well, of course, that's what the Scripture says. Of course, that's what the Bible says. I've even got that one of my lectures quoting right from the Bible. It says that something to the effect that that the honor of God is to conceal a matter. To conceal a matter is what God does. And to search out that matter, to search out that secret, is the honor of a man. So God gives you secrets of the universe. He gives you secrets. Well, think about it. The life you live. Where did the earth come from? You know, like that one astronomer said, the universe is not only stranger than you imagine, the universe is stranger than you can imagine. There are mysteries out there, all out into the universe. There are mysteries here on earth you haven't even looked at yet. And so, you know, the creation by God, so to speak, is a mystery. And happily, most people do not have the intellectual acumen to deal with the mystery, so they just watch TV. But if you've got a brain and you start thinking about what the Bible is saying, what the holy books of the world are saying, you begin to see that there's a whole different story than what you thought was there. The Bible is filled with an incredible story. I don't put the Bible down. I'm not complaining. I'm not suggesting the Bible is worthless and useless. No. My feeling about the Bible, the Christian and Jewish Bible, is that there is a profound, awesome stuff hidden. It's hidden in the Bible. And until and unless you start looking at the Bible as a metaphor, as a symbolic metaphor for something very ancient which has been known, and when you start breaking down the words and the terms and seeing what the Bible is actually saying, all of a sudden it takes on a completely different hue completely.